Welcome to Thursday night teachings, and as usual we will start with setting our motivation. And although we may never actually identify it as such, almost every moment of our life we are implementing the universal law of cause and effect, or causality. If we want a result, we go about finding what the causes and conditions are to have that result, and then we go about in our lives doing that. And so whether we want to find an excellent school to go to, or have a relationship, have healthy teeth, go on vacation, have a family, acquire a new skill, we first put that result up out there, and then we go work on creating the causes and conditions to have that result arise in our life. And we do this every day in all worldly matters, learning as we go what those causes and conditions are. And so with the Dharma, the law of causality also applies. If we want happiness, if we want freedom from suffering, if we want awakening, the Buddha has taught and given us the precise, practical causes and conditions that we need to create to be able to experience the results that we're looking for. And so tonight, as we share the Dharma together, may we see this activity as creating the causes and conditions for liberation from suffering, fortunate rebirths, and the ultimate goal of awakening, not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. And so let's use the law of cause and effect to practice the Dharma as well as we do in our worldly activities for that long-term goal of benefiting all beings. So good evening, everyone. This is not Venerable Children. She is away in India and will be gone for, I think, about 8 weeks. And while she is going to be away, she has suggested that the Abbey community do an in-depth review of some of the topics of the Lamrim. And so she chose those, and each of us got a chance to pick one out that we wanted to do a review on. And to share our own personal experience of meditating on that topic, how we use it to deepen our practice and how we use it to integrate and transform our minds. So tonight, the first one is Precious Human Life, which is one of my favorites, so I jumped at the chance to offer this tonight. The sources that I'm going to use to share tonight are Venerable Children's Guided Meditations on the Stages of the Path, which is a wonderful book on the Lamrim, including basically a walkthrough of each one of the topics on an MP3, so she leads you personally through them. Geshe Zopa's Steps on the Path to Enlightenment, his first volume. And then Yangtze Rinpoche's Practicing the Path. So I went to the sources that I have learned to trust over the years as far as helping me with the accuracy of the teachings tonight. Geshe Zopa says that the Lamrim is the essence of the Buddha's teachings, and that they have been arranged in a very practical way. And that the Lamrim is one of the foundation practices that we have here at the Abbey, along with thought training. We either cycle through them one topic after another, in our morning and evening practices, or in our individual practices we will take one of the topics if something challenging has come up in our life or a situation that we need some understanding about our own minds, or just to deepen our practice. So the Lamrim has been the foundation teaching. It's been one of the foundation teachings that Venerable has taught since I have known her, for almost 15 years of my spiritual life. And so I think that's why she has really suggested this for the next few weeks. And the first topic, the precious human life, is to get a sense how fortunate and rare and how precious it is. And it's sort of like it's coming to terms or discovering that the heart or the essence of this life is not about temporal happiness, it's not about finding a relationship, it's not about experiences outside ourselves, but it's found within our own hearts and minds. And that the Lamrim is one of those powerful tools to be able to get in touch with our own minds, to learn what to cultivate, learn what to abandon, so that we can discover what the essence and the preciousness of our life here in this world right now is. And that, and so I asked myself, I said, because I think in the end, wanting to benefit, want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, wanting to help, and to affect some sort of change in a positive way in our world, I would be probably correct in assuming that most of us listening tonight, and certainly at the Abbey here, have that as our main purpose, and that we would say yes to those questions, that we want to benefit, we want to be something, be part of something bigger than our life. We want to affect a virtuous change in the world. And so how do we nourish that wish? How do we nourish that deep longing and discovering of the essence of this life? One of the core teachings that the Buddha helps us to get in touch with that is this teaching on precious human life. And it has helped me to see my life in a very different way than I used to. There are a number of characteristics that define what a precious human life is. And at least for me, I had seen most of those as givens. I had taken them for granted. I think that I just came into this life with them. And now I have all my parts, I've got a pretty good mind, I have a roof over my head, I have plenty of food to eat, I've got friends who support me, I have a qualified teacher. What's the big deal? That has pretty much been a lot of my thinking, even since I met the Dharma. And that is somehow it's a given. And I live my life even in this beautiful environment with all the things that I have. I see it as being very much something that is an entitlement, something that I take for granted. But yet when I look about and I look closely at the world and I see what other people and what other living beings have, I suddenly realize that what I have is a very big deal. I have something that is really quite extraordinary. And that the conditions that I think many of us have are very rare actually, and that when we look at the overall state of the world and the overall state of other beings and other people live, it is most extraordinary. And so tonight we're really going to explore what are the characteristics that constitute a precious human life, what are the remarkable, difficult, rare causes to actually bring one about, and then some really wonderful metaphorical examples about its rarity and its value. And so what we're going to do, we're going to go over the 8 freedoms, the 10 fortunes to begin with, which, well, they're pretty amazing. And these are worth looking at on an individual basis, and we're going to go through them step by step. So there are 8 states of existence that we are free from that would make it difficult to practice the Dharma. 4 of those freedoms are freedom from non-human states of existence, and 4 of them are freedoms of certain states of human existence that would make it very hard to practice the Dharma in this life. With the freedoms from the first 4, which are the freedoms from non-human states, we have to remember that the Buddhist world view teaches that there are a lot more beings than just human beings and animals in this universe, that there are many that we don't see, which doesn't mean that they don't exist. And so it's really helpful to put this, we need to open our view to really appreciate this teaching of precious human life. To open up, if you don't believe in rebirths and you're not sure about these different realms, to at least for tonight, put down any skepticism and just hold it in a bigger view of the possibility of other beings existing besides just us and the ones that we can see. And in these realms, that the non-human ones, it is nearly impossible to create virtue, much less be able to liberate oneself from the suffering of that state of existence. So I'm going to go through the four non-human realms, and to kind of put them in context of what we kind of experience here and put them in perspective. The first one, which we are free of, once again, keep thinking that these are things that we are not experiencing and that this is very rare and very fortunate, very precious. First is being a hell being. Okay, so due to ignorance, hatred, anger, rage, harming others, retaliating, these beings are now experiencing the results of those causes, of having that kind of mind. And it is now they are in a state of pain, fear, terror, torture, incredible physical hardship. And so sometimes when I get kind of, well, I'm not sure about hell beings, is that I look at the people in our world that have serious addictions. People who are addicted to meth, people who are addicted to sex, gambling, food, drugs, alcohol. And I go ahead in my mind, I multiply that thousands and thousands of times, that type of mental and physical suffering, to give myself some type of indication of what it would be like to be born as a hell being. That we are free of in this life. Second one is the hungry ghost realm, which due to ignorance, craving, clinging, that kind of grasping, addictive kind of mind, those beings have been born in a place where their entire existence is consumed by the search for food, shelter, satisfaction, and that the pain and the suffering is to not ever be able to be satisfied. There's this gnawing, incredible, intense hunger and thirst and fear. And so I once again think of those that are really hooked into very, very serious addictions, and I multiply that thousands and thousands of times to give me a sense of what a hungry ghost experience would be. The hell beings, besides having that type of addictive mind, they also, I think of the people that are in prison. I think of people who have been tortured in our world. I think of people who are undergoing very intense physical suffering. And I multiply that 1,000 times, and I also imagine that the hell beings are also experiencing that. Excuse me while I fix my audio here. Okay, so hell beings, we are free of that state. Hungry ghosts, we are free of that state. Now, animal beings, which we are also free of the state, are the ones that we get to see because we have them in our world. And the suffering of animals varies from really horrifying, frightful lives, and there are actually some that, from our side, appear to have very comfortable, spoiled, indulged kind of lives. But the point is about the animal realm is that no matter how they live, they have no capacity to understand the Dharma. They have no capacity to understand how to create virtue and how to abandon non-virtue. And they are totally consumed with either defending territory, procreating, running away from being eaten, sleeping all day, and killing to survive. And we are, in this life, free from that state. And one of the things that I have, because I love animals so much, is that I have had to be very careful, and I've talked to Venerable about this, is to be careful about not wishing to be my tree. To be willing to be our cat, to be our dog, to wish to be a hawk gliding in the sky or a porpoise running over the waves in the world. That we want to be very careful that we don't set that as an intention and sort of unconsciously create the cause and conditions to be born an animal. So even though they look from their side to be having very wonderful, kind of magical lives, they do not have the capacity to practice and understand the Dharma and to create the causes and conditions for precious human life, and to really be free of the suffering of the animal realm. So this one is very important for us to kind of understand and make sense of, because we have them in our lives, and there's kind of a romantic notion sometimes about different animals and how they live with us. And then the fourth non-being realm, which we are free of being born in, is the God realm, which doesn't sound too bad. It's sensual pleasure beyond anything that we have in this world. Living long, delightful lives, having beautiful bodies. And it is said, Geshe Zopa says, that they are totally absorbed in sensual bliss, that during most of their existence as a god, their mental activity is arrested. So they have no interest in thinking things through. There's no logical thinking. It's all about sense pleasure, how the body's feeling, the smells, the tastes, the experiences of the five senses. And they have no interest in pursuing the Dharma whatsoever. They are so enthralled with sense pleasure. And the thing that's kind of tragic about it is that the God realm life is the result of some very virtuous karma. But because their minds are not capable of creating the cause and conditions to have more virtue in the future, once the karma ripens and ends in that realm, they are propelled to a lower rebirth. So we are free of that. So there's the four non-human realms that we are free of being born in. And then the four states that we are free of in this life. So these are a little bit more down to where we can look at them more closely and relate to them more closely. First one is we are free of being born as a barbarian, which is kind of a funny word, and it doesn't mean what we think it is, which is, cavemen and things like that. It refers to being born in a place where there is no Dharma. There is no access to it. In fact, we don't even know that it exists. So right now in this life, we are free from being born in a land that has no Dharma, no access to the teachings. Second freedom in this life that we are free from is being free of mental and physical disabilities. So much a part of being able to understand and integrate the Dharma requires, very strong, determined mental capacity. And being free of mental disabilities where we can't understand the teachings, where we don't know how to cognize, to reason, to follow them through, to make sense of them, would become, an incredible obstacle to practice, first of all. And that the ability to hear, think, and meditate would be very minimal or be very compromised. So this is something that we are free of right now, and this one in particular. When I think about my ability to be able to reason and think about the Dharma, I think about this one and how fortunate I am that I have my wits about me, that I have the mental and physical capacity that I do. Third one, we are free of being born at a time where a Buddhist teachings don't exist and are not in their pure form. So the fact that we have the Buddhist teachings in the world, we are free from not being in a place or living in a state of existence where they are not. And then last, we are free of wrong views. So we have the teachings of the Buddha right now, which is very precious, but the more precious is that we don't have any wrong views, that we don't have views that are ethical, our conduct doesn't have any ethical component, that we can act pretty much however we wish and won't have to pay any type of consequences in the future. And as a result, having a kind of mind that thinks only of I want what I want when I want it, will be very, very difficult to cultivate one's good qualities like compassion, loving kindness, consideration for others. So we are free of that state in this human existence, which I think is very important to be thankful for. How easily we didn't get persuaded by teachers that misled us, and that our views are being nourished by qualified Mahayana teachers. And so looking at each of these in my own practice, it has helped. They have been strong antidotes to having a kind of complacency and indifference that arises in my mind. To think that having this life with all the freedoms that I have is not a given, and that I don't, that at any moment I could have something happen that would totally change having a precious human life. I could be in an accident. I could have some sort of disease that would compromise my mental and physical capacity where I couldn't practice. I could be influenced by others who have very cynical, unethical views that would lead me astray from the Dharma. And so these 10 freedoms help me to kind of get in touch with what it is that I don't have to deal with, things that I don't have to worry about, but to be careful that since I have a precious human life, it's still not guaranteed, that I have to be very, very careful not to become complacent on what I have at this point in my life. And so the 8 freedoms are having a precious human life where we are free of these unfavorable states of existence and conditions. And then the 10 freedoms are actually the positive side. The 10 fortunes are the favorable side of these. So instead of being free of unfavorable states, we now have 10 fortunes, which gives us the opportunity to practice. And so if you're looking at it in a little bit different way, you're looking at it in a more positive, encouraging way. First, okay, so instead of being born as a hell being, animal, hungry ghost, or God, we're born as a human. Okay, that's the first of the 10 fortunes. The second one is being born in a central land where the Buddha's teachings or the 3 jewels have appeared and remain in their pure form, where there are qualified teachers, where there are sincere practitioners who are striving to realize the teachings. You have fully ordained monks and nuns, you have male and female lay practitioners who are practicing. And this is what we are endeavoring here at the Abbey to have someday, is to have, fully ordained monks and nuns, lay practitioners, male and female. We have a qualified spiritual teacher. We have many of the conducive circumstances already here, and in this lifetime, all of us have this. So that's the second one, to be born in a central land. The third one is to have, so this one is we have all the faculties, both physical and mental. We have the ability to cognize. We have mental states that are psychologically fine, cognitively fine. We have the ability to listen, to understand the teachings, to analyze, to question, which are so crucial for understanding. So we have that. That's number 3. 4 is not to have committed one of the 5 heinous crimes, which is to kill your mother, kill your father, kill an arhat, draw blood from a Buddha, or cause schism in a Sangha, which may entail spreading wrong views that are not in line with the Vinaya or the Buddha's teachings, causing disharmony and distrust, and finally splitting a Sangha community. These actions are sort of pulled out of all the negative actions that sentient beings can create, is because they bring extremely painful results in the lower realms, and that these objects, parents, holy beings, are very powerful objects of karma. So the virtue that we create in relationship to them brings very powerful, positive, virtuous results, and the non-virtue that we create in relationship to them brings very, very non-virtuous results. And since we really don't know who's a Buddha and who's an arhat, it serves us well to think about everybody as not wanting to harm anybody. So it kind of covers this whole idea about not drawing blood from a Buddha, killing an arhat, and hopefully not ever killing our mother and father. Very powerful negative karmic results from those 5 heinous non-virtues. And then the 5th one is to have faith in the Dharma. And this one has been one that I have thought about a lot, particularly here living at the Abbey, because we have a lot of folks come here with incredible, sincere aspirations to come and live and practice the Dharma. And the interest is really strong at first, and then after a while it seems to dissipate. And they end up going away or abandoning the Dharma, or actually cultivating some doubt, some wrong views, and then they leave and they no longer practice the Dharma. So having the faith, having the confidence, having the sincere wish to practice is a very special fortune, I think, for those of us in the world now, and to remember that this is something that is very rare, because there are a lot of people that meet the Dharma and they don't stay with the Dharma. So these are the 5 fortunes that pertain from our own, what are they called? The freedoms that come from, as an individual, what we garner. And then the other 5 fortunes pertain to others, what others offer that add the quality of preciousness to our life. Sorry about that. Okay, so the first one is we live at a time where the Buddha has appeared and has taught the complete entire path to awakening. From what the scriptures say, this is not a very common occurrence. Apparently there are eons where there are Buddhas that do not appear at all. There are times where the Buddhas appear and don't teach. There are eons where the Buddhas come and they teach, but they don't teach the entire path. Like the Tantric path is very rare and not all the Buddhas teach Tantra. The third is that the teachings are preserved in scriptures and commentaries, so we still have them in written form. And then the fourth is that we have the teachers and the practitioners that maintain a lineage that is illuminated by realizations with their mind streams. So we actually have beings in our world that have the realizations of the Dharma in their minds. And out of great compassion, which is an added piece, is that they teach us the Dharma, so that our knowledge, and hopefully we'll be able to gain realizations on the path eventually. These are the four fortunes that line up just right after the other. The Buddha has appeared, he's given all the teachings, we have the teachings preserved in scriptures, and we also have qualified teachers and practitioners who are realizing them in their minds. And then the fifth one is that we have the support of people around us. And here at the Abbey, this is huge. I mean, we have people who support us, supply us with food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. And so that is one of the great fortunes, to be able to practice, that we don't have to worry where our food comes. We have a roof over our heads, that we have medicine, that we have clothes. And this is one of those that is so easily taken for granted. It's a form of entitlement, when in fact we've created the cause and conditions to have this particular fortune. And so, so summarizing the freedoms and fortunes is that we have created, or someone we were in the past, that mind stream practiced very hard and sincerely for us to reap the benefit of those efforts. And we want to keep creating those causes for ourselves in this life and who we will be in future lives. And I asked a Venerable once about this, about precious human life, and how we might lose some or all of these freedoms and fortunes in this very life. Especially, I asked her about the one about having faith in the Dharma. I think it was after a time where someone who had been here for a while left, and we kind of don't hear from them anymore. And I don't even know if they're practicing anymore. So I asked her about, because my understanding was that when you get a precious human life, you're kind of copacetic, like you're good to go for the next 100 years. And she said that you have to continue to create the cause and conditions, not just for precious human life in the future, but to be able to create the cause and conditions to continue to have the precious life in this life. That anything can happen. Negative karmic seeds can ripen, and we can lose any of these freedoms and fortunes at any time. And then our life will be a human life, we'll still be here, but it won't be a precious human life where we have all of these freedoms and fortunes. So the freedoms and fortunes, we are actually experiencing the results of the causes and conditions that whatever our previous lives were before created for us. So right now we're experiencing the results. And simultaneously, we have to be able and willing to create the causes and conditions to have it now and in the future. Okay, so those are the freedoms and fortunes. So that's what kind of lines out how to describe what are the characteristics of having a precious human life. Very helpful to contemplate them. This is not a given. This is not a guarantee. This is a very big deal about what we have right now. Then second, we go into the rarity and the value. And this is broken down into 3 sort of subtopics. One is it's rare from the point of view of cause. The second one is rare from the point of view of example. And the third one is rare from the point of view of numbers. And this takes a totally different look. We're going to be looking at what it takes to actually get where we are right now, having what we have. And so the first one, rare from the point of view of cause. Okay, so these are, I find these utterly amazing that we've all done this in the past, and that's why we're here. First, to be born just as a human, just having an ordinary human life, we have had to practice pure ethical conduct. We have had to refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle talk, maliciousness, covetousness, wrong view. Pure ethical conduct is the substantial cause for having a human life. Not a precious one, just a human life. And when I think about the course of my day and how much I practice pure ethical conduct and how I refrain from 10 non-virtues, I mean, just having a human life, what we've had to do in past lives and how pure our conduct has had to be to get where we are, because it's very, very difficult to refrain from those 10 non-virtues on a daily basis, much less on a weekly or to a lifetime, a course of a lifetime, or on a continual enthusiastic effort to refrain. And then to attain a precious human life, not only do we have pure ethical conduct as the sort of the substantial cause for the human life, but then the cooperative causes and conditions are to then practice the 5 far-reaching practices. That's what makes it precious. One of the main substantial causes is to have practiced generosity, practiced patience, practiced joyous effort, and I kind of lined them out so that we can see them a little bit more. Let's see. Okay. To be generous, patient. We have practiced joyful efforts in our previous lives in creating virtue. We've been able to concentrate on virtuous objects single-pointedly for long periods of time. And we've had to have some deep conceptual understanding of emptiness to get where we are right now with this precious human life. So once again, in context of how we're all functioning right now as Dharma practitioners, how difficult is it to integrate and to practice the far-reaching practices in our daily lives? You know, I mean, can you kind of see how this is starting to build up into the rarity that it is? Then lastly, another crucial, important, supportive cause for precious human life is to make very pure, sincere prayers to have one. So my thinking is, if I've made pure, sincere prayers to have a precious human life, that means that in some previous life I had met the Dharma. And I got to the point where I understood the causes and conditions that bring the results of precious human life. And that all of us made prayers to meet qualified spiritual teachers and to follow their instructions. We have done this before, and we are experiencing the results of that virtue. And that's why it's so important to dedicate all of our good deeds, our practice, our offering service, our volunteering, all of our virtuous activity of body, speech, and mind, to dedicate it for, you know, the precious human, a string of precious human rebirths, for liberation and for awakening. So we dedicate, we sort of safeguard all of that virtue, and we make sincere prayers. May I have a precious human life the next time around so I can practice the Dharma specifically for the continuation of that string of precious human lives, liberation, and awakening for the benefit of all beings. So we've done that before. That's the part that blows me away when I contemplate precious human life. Okay. Yangtze Rinpoche, I found this very, very helpful. He shares some interesting reasonings for appreciating what it takes to garner a precious human life and the rare opportunity it affords in his book, Practicing the Path, which I really want to share because I found it very worthwhile. And he gave some examples. He says that if we are unable to appreciate this precious human life, and instead spend our life chasing after objects of attachment, wanting, craving, grasping, consuming, it will be like having a hungry ghost mind in this life, creating that result in the future. Okay? If we spend our life hating, holding resentments, grudges, wanting revenge, and wishing harm to those we see as enemies, we will have the mind of a hell being in this life and create that result in the future. If we spend our life just spacing out, channel surfing, cruising the internet, letting life slip away by not attempting to create any virtue, it's like having an animal mind this life, and that is the result we will experience in the future. So, that kind of puts, put in perspective what I do on a daily basis and the cause and conditions that I am creating and the results that I am working towards. And how hard it is to create the causes for this precious human life, to have them all ripen at the time of death to be a throwing karma to get a precious human life. I mean, all the things that have to be lined up at the time of death to bring us to this precious human life, and all the ways in which that might not happen. Okay, so we've done a lot of work in previous lives to get where we are now, to continually remember how rare and how valuable this life is. Okay, the second way to see its rarity and value is from the point of view of example. And I have a really strong imagination, so I like metaphors and analogies, and the Buddha, and particularly in Tibetan Buddhism, they use a lot of metaphors and analogies to sort of bring home a point. And so this is the famous metaphor of the blind tortoise, which is showing the rarity of precious human life by the point of view of an example. So I want everybody to close their eyes. Close your eyes out there. And I'll just read this through and just keep your eyes and just follow with me. Imagine a vast, turbulent ocean in which a blind tortoise lives. Most of the time, this blind tortoise lives at the bottom of the sea. But every 100 years, he or she comes up for air. On the surface of this ocean is a golden yolk with a hole in its center, being carried here and there by the waves and the wind. What are the chances of this blind tortoise coming up for air and putting its nose through the golden yolk? Almost non-existent. If anything, almost never. Now, reasoning. If the turtle came up for air more frequently, maybe the chances would increase, or if the ocean wasn't so unpredictable with all the winds and the waves, it would have a better chance. But it doesn't. If the turtle wasn't blind, he or she would maybe have a chance. If the yolk was anchored in one place, the possibility would be greater. But it's not. If the ocean were smaller, the chances would also increase. But it isn't. In this metaphor, the vast ocean is cyclic existence, and the turtle represents sentient beings. Most of them are blinded by ignorance and do not understand cause and effect, what is virtuous and non-virtuous. Most of these sentient beings live in the lower realms at the bottom of the ocean of samsara. The turtle coming up to the surface once every 100 years represents the very rare chance for a sentient being to be born as a human being. Even more rare than that is the turtle poking its head through the gold yolk, which symbolizes a precious human life. Meeting the Buddha's teachings, having the 8 freedoms and 10 fortunes, having practiced pure ethical conduct, the far-reaching practices, making sincere prayers in many previous lives. We are, right now, at this point in time, the blind tortoise at the surface of the ocean, swimming around happily with a golden yolk around its nose. So just hold that image in your mind right now for a while. Very happy tortoise. And finally, open your eyes. Once you open your eyes. Finally, the rarity and value of a precious human life in view of numbers. So for those mathematicians out there, according to the Buddha, the hell beings, those that we described, due to all the anger, hostility, rage, resentment, harming other living beings, are the most numerous, uncountable, limitless, countless hell beings. The hungry ghost, those due to their craving, their grasping, their addictive minds, suffering, wandering, the great unhappiness, restless, unable to be satisfied. Less numerous, but still almost countless. The animal realm, less numerous, and we see them, we know where they are. There are so many, from the biggest whale to the tiniest living thing. Still almost uncountable. Okay, we're doing the math here. In these three states of existence, the mind is not capable of creating virtue because the level of suffering and ignorance is so great. And until the karma has finished, they are caught in that state of existence, and unfortunately, while they're still there, they are creating more negative karma. So freeing themselves from those horrible states of existence, our dear Maitri included, is very, very difficult. Okay, so lastly, 7+ billion humans. We can count them. We see the rarity of precious human life by thinking of all the humans, how many of them have met the Dharma? Okay, so out of 7+ billion. I've heard some number a few years ago reading something I read on the website, 250 million Buddhists in the world. I don't know whether they're practicing or not, but that's what they call themselves. Okay, let's say, of those who have interest and who have met a qualified spiritual teacher, that makes the number even smaller and very countable. Of those who actually are sincerely practicing, hearing and thinking and meditating on the Buddha's teachings, really trying to integrate them in their lives. So they've met the Dharma, they've met qualified spiritual teachers, and they're practicing. Not just calling themselves Buddhists, and they have a nice altar, and they have tankas, and they have books in their shelves. These are the ones who are genuinely practicing. Even less. And lastly, the smallest number of all, those who have realized the Dharma in their minds. So can you see how precious what we have right now is? I mean, that's where I go. And I would venture to guess that we are all somewhere in the range of the humans who have met the teachings and are trying to practice. So we're down on that last 3 countable human beings in this world. I'll just sit with that. So to contemplate all these points which characterizes a precious human life, so to think about the characteristics of a precious human life, to think of the causes and conditions that we have created and that we continue to need to create, to have them now and in the future. Let's look at it in the view of the value, to learn, to understand and practice, to realize that in this very life which we have, it's mind-boggling what we have right now in this moment. And to use this precious human life in which we have the capacity to plant the seeds both for the ultimate goal of awakening, as well as creating the cause and conditions to have a steady stream of precious human lives, one after the other, and then to take each moment of this life to transform our minds, to cultivate our good qualities, to abandon the non-virtues, to really generate bodhicitta. So we've got our temporal goal. Let's get a string of precious human lives by continuing to create the causes and conditions to have them. For the ultimate goal of awakening, to benefit all beings, free them from this suffering state. And we get to do that opportunity every moment that we live in this precious human life by doing all the things we can to generate our good hearts, to understand reality as it is, to cultivate bodhicitta. And Geshe Zopa repeats this over and over again in his commentary on the Lamrim Chenmo. We must seize the moment, make this life meaningful. If we don't, our actions will degenerate. I mean, we won't stay the same. We won't just tend to be kind of nice, good people till we die. That if we don't practice, and we're not creating the causes and conditions to have virtue in our minds, those states will actually degenerate and we'll lose them. And we'll be beginning to practice, sliding a little bit and more non-virtue, being a little bit more complacent, being more distracted. And our unique opportunity presented by this precious human life will be lost. Like finding a precious treasure, he says, let's not lead this life empty-handed. So I have used the precious human life meditation when I get complacent, when I get complaining, when I get discouraged, when I get depressed, when I get lazy. I mean, it's kind of one of those tools, one of those medicines you can put in your medicine chest and pull it out just about any time that you have kind of a disturbing state of mind or you're not very happy, frustrated, confused. It's one of those kind of one medicine, one shoe fits all. So I wanted to, I'm going to end actually a little bit early here tonight, but I wanted to share with you, maybe open for some questions. Like I said, the Tibetans have some wonderful metaphors to bring the Dharma into real time, real life. And some of them are quite, they're very Tibetan. And there's the one that is talked about, the first time that Venerable told this story here at the Abbey, I think we all just burst out laughing because we couldn't believe that anybody would tell such a, or would make up such a silly story. On one level, it makes no sense and it's kind of silly, but on the other hand, when you get down to the core and the pith of what the story is saying, it totally communicates every point of this precious human life meditation. So I want to share it with you. And there's very different versions of it, and I'll take Geshe Zopa's. So, once upon a time in Tibet, there was this crippled man. Now don't ask for the details. I'm only going to give you the general story. He didn't have any legs. Okay, and I don't know whether he was born like that or whether he was crippled or what happened. And because he didn't have any legs, most of the time life was extremely difficult. He sat on a boulder at the edge of a drop. Spent, very difficult to find food, and he had a lot of physical suffering. One day, while he was sitting on this rock, a wild ass came running by. Not a donkey, a wild ass. Now the story goes, there's two versions. One says that he fell off the cliff onto the back of the wild ass, but Geshe Zopa says he jumped, which I like the idea that he actually jumped. And so he jumped onto the wild ass, took hold of the mane, and went galloping down into the field, down wherever he was, singing at the top of his lungs. And the people around, surprised and shocked that this legless man should be riding on the back of a wild ass, said, "What are you doing? Why are you singing? And why are you singing that loud?" And the crippled man said, I am a crippled man who has found myself on the back of a wild ass. What are the chances of me ever finding and gaining this opportunity ever again in my life? Why not sing? And why not be joyful? So listening to this story is kind of, I love it. So, precious human life. We are the crippled man, sentient beings going, suffering in cyclic existence. And the wild ass is a precious human life. And we jump on. And we have created the causes and conditions to jump on to this wild, incredible, rare, precious human life. That we pray that Maitri and all other living beings will have the opportunity to have in the future. And so may we be able to take to heart what we have. Sometimes when the going gets really good, I get into a groove and I don't remember what I have going for me. And so if you have one of those lives where you get into a groove and you forget about what you've got going for you, pull out the Dharma meditation on precious human life and put your life in every one of those points. Think about the causes and conditions. Think about the blind tortoise. Think about the crippled man on the wild ass. And realize that you are that blind tortoise with the golden yoke, and you are the crippled man singing joyfully, outrageously, gleefully on the back of a wild ass. So, hopefully this has been of benefit. I have enjoyed immensely putting together this sharing, and I want to, thank Venerable Children and her teacher Geshe Zopa and Yangtze Rinpoche for providing the fuel for this sharing, and hopefully that will be of benefit to all that have listened tonight. So, yes.
There's a question.
Okay.
Karen. If there is, how can we understand a human who is a serial killer in this life? If they have to have practiced pure ethical conduct just to get a human life, how can this come alongside a mind stream that is so intent on killing?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that question. Actually, that came up when I was going through this. Let's see, how would I answer that? Well, I think the pure ethical conduct, once again, I think we have to remember that the causes and conditions for anything are not linear. So creating the causes for a human life is not like one life he created pure ethical conduct and one life he did a whole lot of killing. The pure ethical conduct were seeds that were planted perhaps in his mind over many, many lifetimes. Okay? So the throwing karma at the time of death brought him to a human life. In that mind stream are countless negative seeds of karma that he hasn't purified. So he's got, just like us, we're here with a precious human life, and although we're not serial killers, we have breaks of outrage, we steal, we commit sexual misconduct, we lie, we cheat, we talk behind people's backs. We have the negative karma that's ripening in our mind streams within this precious human life are not serial killers. But karma isn't linear. You can have people who have incredible wealth in this world who cheat people. You can have serial killers who are born as humans. You can have animals who, I was at an event last week that are dressed in bows and painted fingernails and ride in baby carriages. So karma doesn't run on a linear level where everything's going to be good or everything's going to be bad. You have lots of karmic seeds ripening, substantial and cooperative, depending on the environments in which, the conducive circumstances, or what's out there, what's feeding them, what's nourishing them. So, it's not linear. And there's a lot of examples in our world that, there are people who, I knew of someone a number of years ago who was one of the wealthiest people in this part of the country, and he took his life. So he had created this incredible wealth from many lifetimes of practicing amazing generosity. But he came in with a mind that didn't feel it was worth living. Okay, so that's kind of the way that I look at it. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so let's take a moment and just kind of do a little bit of digestion meditation, and then we'll dedicate. So think about what you've heard tonight. Think about maybe one or two points that either became insights or help you to deepen your understanding of how rare and precious this human life is. Maybe there's something that you're not quite sure about that you may want to bring right now into a little bit of meditation, something you may want to look into, something that gives you a sense of joy, a sense of opportunity. So let's just take a moment to think about one or two points that had some meaning tonight. And so let's dedicate the merit of sharing tonight and make a deep and sincere prayers that whatever virtue we have created, that it becomes the cause and conditions to have, yet continue to have a precious human life this life, to create the cause and conditions to have precious human lives, life after life, to build up an extraordinary momentum of having a string of them, to free ourselves from the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death under the control of ignorance, afflictions, and karma. And may we become Buddhas quickly, so that we may help guide and benefit all beings to free them from this, to help them to free themselves from this state also. So may tonight become part of the causes and conditions for a precious human life.